Back live here at Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. Your turn now to step up to bat and play with the panel. And still with us, Ed Schultz, Farai Shadea, Ann Kornblut, and Joe Scarborough. First up, Alice in New Jersey thinks the Mark Penn flap may be the last straw. Listen.
How can any clear-thinking American voter or press person separate out the judgment question for Hillary Clinton, whether it's hiring Mark Penn, her Iraq vote, her stretches on Bosnia and the death of a woman having no health care not being true, and her shame on you tactics? How can anyone separate out the judgment from the judger?
My guess is that Alice was never a big Hillary supporter. Joe, let me ask you a more basic question. Even for those of us who are following the ins and outs of this, why does it matter that Penn is out at this point? If you think about your campaign and you're trying to appeal to voters, why does something like this matter?
You know, I don't want to upset the caller, but I just don't think it does. We would be hard pressed to find 1 out of 100 people in Pennsylvania who knows Mark Penn, what Mark Penn does. I mean, this isn't the sort of thing that they grab hold to. They do grab hold to exaggerations in Bosnia or the exaggerations with the woman in the hospital. But Mark Penn, that is so inside baseball. Who knows? Who cares? It's just like in the House scandal. Most Americans didn't know who Jack Abramoff was, but they sure as heck knew who Tom DeLay was. They got that. I just think Penn is too inside baseball.
But to the extent, Ann, that it becomes such a dominant narrative that Hillary Clinton has to deal with, it either distracts her, distracts the campaign, and forces them to recalibrate their message when they're spending most of their time doing that.
Absolutely. And I think it's true. Most people, Mark Penn is not a household name at this point. But I do think the perception, and it's been put out there by the Obama campaign, no question about it. It doesn't come from nowhere. And the caller sounds like she's definitely gotten the Obama campaign message. But I think that the idea that she hasn't been able to run her own shop efficiently, that she was unaware of what Mark Penn was up to, and that for some liberal Democrats that she was sort of a pro-business centrist Democrat who was allowing her campaign strategists to lobby on behalf of a free trade agreement. I think all of it taken together will probably get through simply because we're going to be talking about it for a few days, and that isn't good for Senator Clinton.
All right, next up, Viola in California has a preview of what's to come during the General Petraeus testimony tomorrow. She says General Petraeus is going to give a glowing report on Iraq to help McCain get elected, and then they will send even more troops to Iraq. This ploy of drawing down brigades is only a cover-up to help McCain get elected. I would suggest that is a bit cynical, especially since General Petraeus has served the country as well as he has even before this war. But Farai, it does speak to an issue here about a political context that he is stepping into, both from the point of view of the presidential campaign, but also you've got an incumbent president in George Bush who does not want to give up any gains that may be there on the ground, knowing that this is going to go on well past his time in office anyhow.
Well, you know, today on our show we had on Major General William Gaskin, who was leading this 25,000-person troop force in Al Anbar province, and you know he's a Marine Major General. And the question then becomes, you know, he gave us his take on Basra and Al Anbar, but if the surge is working, the question becomes, well, why would you diminish it? And it's this really tough pivot that people from Petraeus to the president to McCain to the Democratic contenders are going to have to deal with. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But does that mean that you leave more troops on the ground?
Yeah, I do think, before I move on here, I think Ed's point is important, which is there is a financial cost to staying in Iraq, and I do think a lot of Americans are wondering, at what cost do we stay if there's not any real progress? That's a big part of the debate. Moving on, Hillary Clinton this morning thought she should get some extra points for hair and makeup. Listen to this.
Do you realize how much longer it takes me to get ready than my two opponents? I mean, really, just think about it. I think I should get points for working as hard as I do, plus having to spend so much time getting ready.
One of our viewers, Dale, had a different take on the senator's remarks, and he writes this: Hillary would not be able to answer the 3 a.m. phone call until 3:30. It takes her an additional half hour to get ready. Funny point. I thought, see, that's a funny point by Ann. I mean, I do think these are fairly rare, these very humanizing moments. That's a funny bit she had.
It was. I was there when she said it yesterday in Missoula, and we all looked up from our laptops and thought, wow, she's off her talking points. Of course, it does raise the question of how long it takes you to get ready in the morning, David, but we won't even go there.
Yeah, exactly, please. Moving on, Andrea in New York has a twist on the Clinton tax return story. She says voters may see the Clintons' tax returns as positive if the Clintons leaving the White House with not that much wealth can put together such monies for themselves. Americans may believe Hillary can do the same for the country. I don't know, Ed. I looked at that story about their wealth. There was certainly a very sizable contribution to charity as well, which is something that we all tend to focus on when we analyze these things for politicians. Do you see any issue there for them?
You know, I really don't, David, because the Clintons have always been servers of the government and the people. They never got into this thinking that there'd be a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You know, Bill Clinton had a very successful run for 8 years. He's in demand. Most of their money came off of speeches. They both wrote successful books. They're very popular internationally. Bill Clinton's has some big international business connections. I don't think the American people are going to begrudge anybody for making a living. But the question is, and I think the vetting process is going to have to be done on this, who donated to the Clinton Library and what favors were done? I think the American people want to know about that.
I got to get a break in here. Predictions coming up next.